Check me out.
Yeah. Hey, podcast listening people. As always, very grateful to have you here. Very humbled that you're listening to this. And do us a small favor. Before you leave, do not forget to subscribe, leave a review, and give us a shout on social media too. Wherever you are paying attention, we're grateful and we love to hear from you guys. We love your feedback too. It allows us to continue making this a great show and a great platform. And speaking of great show, I have a really great show for you today. I'm excited to introduce you guys to Crum III, who is founder and CEO of The Conscious Millionaire. He hosts The Conscious Millionaire podcast, which has accrued over 12 million listeners at this point in time and is continuing to grow rapidly. He's written the Conscious Millionaire book, Grow Your Business by Making a Difference, #1 book on Amazon. Also, if you listen to the podcast, he does give a opportunity for you to go get the book for free. So make sure you're listening in for that. Crum has been featured on the Huffington Post, Entrepreneur on Fire, Think Entrepreneurship, Mixergy, Eventual Millionaire, NPR, and many other fantastic places, and now the Mile High Mentors podcast. We talked about some really great stuff, from building your first $1 million to being a conscious millionaire, what that actually means for you. How can you provide value and truly impact the world, but also build wealth for yourself. And not only that, we talked about shamanistic rituals and meditation and lots of great things that you're gonna have to listen in to hear it. And I sincerely hope it will bring you as much value as it has brought for me. Before we get there, very quick, if you're interested in partnering up with us, please don't hesitate to reach out. Send us an email at milehighmentors@gmail.com if you're interested in partnering up with us, sponsoring the show, or collaborating in one way or another. Again, the best way that you can change the world is to start locally, which is why we're doing the Mile High Mentors podcast. And we'd love to see what we can do with you to make that happen and really impact our local community here. So again, milehighmentors@gmail.com, or you can just send us a message on any social media platform you're hanging out on. And real quick, I have been fortunate enough to partner up with Active Blogs, and they're sharing a really valuable free resource for you guys as well. It is a training on the missing links to LinkedIn success. So if you sell products and services business to business, you probably realize that LinkedIn is just massively undervalued and people just really don't know how to use the platform effectively. So they're putting on a free training. You can give it a watch at any time. It is at activeblogs.com/webinar. Again, activeblogs.com/webinar, and you will get the missing links to LinkedIn success, the 7-step process for successful social selling on LinkedIn. Okay, again, guys, very sincerely appreciate you listening in. And without further ado, please welcome Crum III to the Mile High Mentors podcast. By the way, I really appreciate you doing this. I know you're very, very busy, especially if you're stacking 7 hours of podcasts on Wednesday.
Yeah, that's normal though.
That's a lot of.
I have a 7-day-a-week show, Connor.
How do you keep your vocal cords up? Because when I talk all day long,
it's okay.
But you got a good podcasting voice at least, so it makes a difference.
Oh, do I? I don't know. I suppose
you do. You got one of those sexy podcast voices. I got
really?
You do, man. I got this haven't hit puberty yet voice.
No, your voice is fine. Your voice is fine. Seriously.
What makes a good podcast voice?
I think what makes a good podcast voice is somebody who has a lot of authentic energy. And I think it's better if your voice has some resonance to it than if it doesn't. I think that's better. But I'm thinking of people whose names I won't mention who that's not true at all, and they do okay.
That's true. So what's your favorite part about Colorado and being back in Colorado?
Well, what my favorite, it's interesting because there's so many favorite things, but today I'm doing one of my favorite things. In fact, I added it up. I think unless I missed something through the third week of September, I'm camping at least once a week and sometimes twice a week. Like Labor Day, I'm camping on Friday night. I have a concert I'd pre-bought on Saturday night. Oh, yeah, Boz Scaggs. I'm going to Boz Scaggs on Saturday night. Yeah, Boz Scaggs,
What is that?
He's a musician.
Well, I figured that. But what kind of music is that? I've never heard of it. Sounds kind of dirty.
No. Gosh, how can I classify Boz Scaggs? Boz Scaggs is like a few decades. Okay? So he's... I could see there's a disconnect there. Any rate, and then I'm going back out camping for 2 nights again.
That's awesome.
So I get to get the maximum out of it. So today, in a few hours, I'm headed out camping.
Were you this into camping before you had moved back to Colorado? Because you've been back here, a few months now, several months?
I moved back about 3 years, and then I left last year for 6 months and traveled. The Wanderlust got me, and I went over to California, and I looked at, did I want to live in California? And I went to Cancun. And then I came back, and it was Thanksgiving week that I came back, and within 6 days, it was that Saturday after Thanksgiving that I sat down, and even the first day back, I started thinking, so camping and the outdoors, to answer your question, is a big thing. The concerts, the people here, I was just thinking about that last night because I was at Dazzle's, which is a jazz club here, and they had 2 different shows that I stayed, and they were completely unrelated shows, which made it nice. And I don't know if you've been there, but they have 2 stages. So you do one show and have dinner, and because they have a decent restaurant, and then you move to the other stage in the back of the room, and they do it all over again. But it was a completely different type of music, so it was pretty amazing.
This may surprise you, but I do love jazz music and blues rock and old school.
Well, I heard from somebody, because I went to Dazzle's for New Year's Eve. That's what I decided to do New Year's Eve. I actually, the 2 years before this will surprise you, I was definitely the oldest person there, but this doesn't bother me because I hang with people so much younger than me, because those are the people I feel like I am. Like people my age, I don't even hang out with anybody my age. Like what are they doing with their lives? Like
that's funny.
I want people who are building something, right?
I love it. Well, and I hang out with people that are like far my senior.
But I did that too. I did that too.
Yeah.
So I've never resonated with people my own age. In the early part, I was a 19-year-old senior in college and a 20-year-old grad student. And I made my first million at 25 and was living in a 4-story home on the water with a Mercedes that at that point in time was actually like a Bentley. I mean, today you think like everybody has a Mercedes, but in the beginning, Mercedes were like Bentleys. They were pretty rare. Actually, you didn't see very many people with them. And I did that at 25. Well, I didn't have anything in common with the 25-year-old because back then, it's not very long. You just go back a short few years and you're in the old days without the internet, right? It's like totally different world where, the old, gosh,
come on, that's just fairy tales.
No, E.F. Hutton used to have an ad that would not play very well today and was called, "We Make Money the Old-Fashioned Way. We Earn It." Well, when there was no internet, to make $1 million at 25, you actually had to work. You actually had to go do something. There was no way to, your options. What the big difference in entrepreneurship is today is the number of options that are available to leverage. That's the real big difference. And the internet is just a leverage machine. And it's only one of them. Podcasting, which I help people put together podcasts. And we're launching our 5th podcast in just a couple of months. Well, actually a month, and there's 18 shows already recorded for it.
You're an animal.
we've had 12 million listeners. That's a leverage machine, right? Podcasting is a major leverage machine that small and mid-sized companies can really effectively do.
Big time.
Big time.
And it's easy.
And in a very professional way.
And I would look at it now where major blogging was occurring back when WordPress came out. But now, like the tools, all of this, you have an easier way to tell.
And even the blogging has shifted to video blogs, and videos on YouTube and other things. I think that podcasting and videos are the two best ways to leverage. And you can do them. I work with people, and I put it this way. You can go do a Chevrolet. If you want a Chevrolet podcast, you can do that. It's not going to be really effective, but go ahead. I help people build Rolls Royces. But the thing is, it's not that expensive because, I charge $15,000, $20,000, but you're going to have a Rolls Royce when we finished. You can get videos that you shoot and then have professionally edited and nice intros put on them. It's not that expensive. What if you spend $100 per video, but you're putting up a bunch of videos and that gets you a lot of notoriety out there and it draws the right customer because now you branded yourself correctly. So, I'm wandering here, but I'm going to go back to something my father told me. Now my father, when I was growing up, we didn't have any money. Like nada. Like most of the time, like there were like times we didn't even know where the food was coming from. And I just grew up in that kind of environment. But my father always drank Crown Royal. Now, back then, Crown Royal was a big deal. Okay. And it was much more expensive than all the other liquors like it. And he'd say to me, son, it doesn't cost that much more to go first class. So even though we didn't have any money, my dad was saying, I'd rather have this one bottle of Crown Royal and maybe it lasts me a month, but I'm having the best. But he taught me that value. And that's really the truth. You can go to a really nice hotel and you can get a basic room. Or generally you can pay 25% more and get a much nicer room. It's your choice. It doesn't cost that much more to go first class. And when you're building your business, it's going to make all the difference in the world. I'd rather somebody put out one amazing podcast a week, but it's great. It's top quality. And go out and do the right marketing and attract the kind of people. I just finished a boot camp for business coaches. And one of the things in that boot camp that we did was I worked on their mindset, and then we redid all of their business models. But every one of them ended up with substantially higher price points, not because this was how do you get people to pay you more. That wasn't the angle. I put them through an elaborate process where they got clear, gave them 6 different ways to look at the ROI they were helping people get, and then realized that if they just charged a fraction of the actual monetizable result they helped their clients get, that was a fantastic deal for their clients. But the problem is most coaches and most business owners, especially if they're in that 6-figure level, but even in the 7-figure level, are charging too little because they really have no formula.
They don't understand the value of everything.
To value the ROI that they're providing.
JV, I hate to cut you off on that thought, but let's circle back on there because I think that's really important. But for those who, you have a lot of content out there. You have a lot of podcasts, your story.
Well, we just, I added it all up. We just have over 1,500 episodes of our podcast in 4 years.
That's outrageous.
I know. It's exciting, though.
That's really cool, though. So how long has that been now, to get to 1,500? Because you've been doing them weekly.
Yeah,
right?
So just I start my first podcast, so now I'm on my 4th, and I launched the 5th in a month. So we're 7 days a week, but we launched the first podcast back September 16th, 2014, so 4 years ago. And between all of that, we've done over 1,500 episodes.
And you have 12 million plus listeners at this point?
Yep, 194 countries, and we're syndicated on radio shows. So to me, interviewing people, as I say, is the best gig in town. I just signed up. I met him a couple of months ago at a conference I was in New York City. So guy from the past, some of you will know him, some of you won't. The amazing Kreskin just signed up to be on my show, which is kind of cool. He was one of the original, if you go back to the 80s, some in the 90s, but he's a mentalist and probably the best on the planet. And he would come out, have a live audience, and he would go, the woman in the third row, take out the picture of your little poodle dog, and it was just amazing what he could do from cold reading. I mean, it's just really, and when I met him, I talked to him some, and I said, I really love to have you on the show because I'm a huge fan. And he told me, I gave him my book, which he's read. His people wrote me and, said he loved your book. He says, I read 4 books every night. I know. That's what I said too.
What? That's outrageous. How could you do that? How could you fit?
Well, I took speed reading.
You can speed read, but are you really retaining the information like that?
Yeah. So I took one of the best speed reading courses maybe 25 years ago. And I got really good at it. And yes, they do a lot of testing. So I could read the book, 10, 15 minutes. I read the whole book, half hour at the most, because they had a whole system for things you did in what order. And I'd take the test and I could answer the questions. I stopped speed reading for a reason. I didn't enjoy it. I realized that in my case, I'm actually extremely slow reader because I want to think, and for me to sit down with a book, I have to have 2 colored pens and a yellow highlighter. I can't even read without that.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
And I have one of those little yellow highlighters that are the size of a pen. I just bought about 15 of them because I want to be sure I have plenty on hand, right? They're going to run out. And I put them in my pocket. Even going out camping, I'm going to write some notes, but I already have a blue pen, a red pen, and my little yellow highlighter, in my pack I'm taking with me because for me to read, I just want to write all over things. Mm-hmm. In fact, in my book, Conscious Millionaire, Grow Your Business by Making a Difference, in the introduction that I wrote, I gave people permission because there are people who think, oh, this is like hallowed grounds. It's a book. It's printed. I said, write all over it, highlight it. And by the way, you don't even have to read the whole thing because it's 14 chapters. I said, read. If you get 1 chapter and it was what you were supposed to get, I'm good. You do not have to read this whole book because you bought it. It's a resource. Get what you need out of it. But some people need that permission, right? And I just wanted to be sure they were fine. You just write all over my book all you want.
Isn't that amazing about books or podcasts is like you can consume the full thing or even a course, anything like that. And it's just it's that one golden nugget you needed to just flip what's going on in your life to make that shift.
And there's always a golden nugget. And that's what I'm looking for when I'm reading something is like, oh, that's it. If I do this one thing. And when I have guests, I think I'm on my 8th or 9th purple moleskin. The 4th month that I was moleskin is a type of book, notebook. Yeah. Go to Amazon, research moleskin. There are other types, but they come in all kinds of colors. And so I just chose purple, and now I order 4 at a time, right, to be sure I have plenty on hand. And when I'm doing my interviews, I take notes on every guest. And sometimes it's 2 pages, and sometimes it's 6 to 8 pages. And then I go back and read them later and highlight them, and I get ideas. I write down ideas, and I circle stuff. I go, yeah, I'm going to do that. That's a great idea. I get my entire folks. I ask almost every one of my shows. I ask for a book. My joke is it's like the Oprah Book Club. My entire
which show is this? Is this the Conscious Millionaire?
Yeah, Conscious Millionaire, Conscious Millionaire Marketing show. I ask for a book, and the Conscious Millionaire Business Owner show, which is the one that's launching. On that one, you have to be a founder of a company with $1 million+ revenue to be on the show. I get my entire reading list. So when I finish like in 7 days, when I do 7 shows in a day, I'll frequently go to Amazon as soon as I'm through with the show and order one of the books somebody, suggested, because it's where I get my reading list. These are amazing books because everybody say, well, why? And I go, well, why would you recommend this book? What did you get out of it? I'm going, oh my gosh, I want to read this book. So I go order this book. If you were to look at my cocktail table right now, it's got, it's just multiple stacks of books in different categories. Yeah. So I
need to get a bookshelf because I got the same.
Yeah. I have bookshelves too, but then I put the ones that I'm really most interested in reading right now, which is a kind of a competition. It's like a horse race, because then I'll look at them and I'll reorganize them and go. But I read multiple books. I remember at the same time. I never read just one book. I remember it was quite a while ago. I added it up and I was reading 21 books at the same time. And I use little stickums and I put a stickum wherever I stop. But I might put a book down and I don't have a rule. So it's like when I want to read some tonight, then I just ask myself what will be most valuable. And then I pick up that book. And what's interesting is that wherever I marked, that's always exactly the information I need right then. It's like what I've been thinking about that day.
It's like rubbing a crystal ball almost.
It is.
That's kind of badass.
Cool. But it's frequent for me to put down a book and I don't pick it back up for 2 months. And then I pick it back up and I go on.
And just pick a pinpoint spot and just...
I always just mark where I stopped, but it's pretty obvious because the pages are pretty colored.
Yeah.
It's like I've colored them up a lot.
Color-coded sticky notes and everything. So,
I just, I don't do that, but I did just buy some new sticky notes and I was pretty excited because I was buying packs that had all different colors in them, right? Uh-huh. So it's like, oh, what colors do I want? To me, I just got a new iPad. And in fact, on the back of it, I'd closed a nice deal. So I typically buy things to commemorate things because I had a coach, Gary Ryan Blair, who became a good friend. He does the 100-Day Challenge. And he told me, in fact, the Mac that I'm on right now is the screen says bestseller Mac. Because when my book came out and was on Amazon and became a bestseller, that was the day I went and bought the Mac. So I was waiting for my book to be a bestseller. So I bought the iPad because I closed a good deal, and they'll engrave the back. So I had my name put on it, and then under it, Master Closer. So it's my Master Closer. And I'm actually taking it camping with me because, I got the one, so I have a pin.
Why are you taking the iPad camping?
Because the biggest thing for me in camping are my campfires. So these are very spiritual. Like I already, have a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to work on this weekend. So when I go, by work on, I mean when I do my fires. So I'll have a fire tonight, and then tomorrow I'll have a fire in the morning as well for 2 or 3 hours. And I'll do shamanic rituals, where I'll like write things that I want to let go of, and then I'll burn them up in the fire. And I'll get inspiration from the fire. So I'm actually taking up I have about 11 different color moleskins, and I get gold pens so I can write nice things on the front, like what they're about. And so I'm taking my newest moleskin because I just started writing in it a couple of days ago because I'd run through the one before. So I keep a moleskin just for marketing ideas. Like if I'm having a conversation with somebody, I set up these 20-minute calls, and I'll have a conversation with somebody who might become an affiliate, or we're looking at a joint venture, or, throwing around ideas. I'll take all my notes in my marketing journal and date them and who it was at the top of the page. And then I'll know that they're there. Now, I know that's pretty old school, but the nice thing is that I can always take that moleskin around with me. Like next week, I'm going to a couple of baseball games.
Well, there's something powerful in writing something down for some reason.
There is something very powerful. Yeah. And when I go to the baseball games, I have a green moleskin, and on the front of it, it says JV's Ideas, and I drew a little light bulb with little lines coming out of it. So I take it's like Linus in his blanket, I think. I take my green personal moleskin to baseball games with me, because my joke is I like baseball games, but as you know, they're 3.5 hours long. And for the most part, nothing happens. right? That's just the basic nature. You can go innings and nobody had a home run, right? So I'll just take my, moleskin with me and I'll just write out ideas. Like last night, so I was at Dazzle's from 6 till 11 a.m., 6 p.m. to 11, 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. It felt like a.m. And what I'll do is I send myself emails. So I have about at least 12 emails that I sent myself last night while I was at Dazzle's. And I'll just send them to myself, and they don't have anything in them but a subject line. But the subject line is something that I want to do, and it came to me. So I send myself emails, and then I have a checklist in my emails this morning of stuff that needs to get done. Yeah, so
structuring out the day.
Yeah.
So JV, let me tighten this up. Let's take a step back here. Because I've had multiple conversations with you at this point, and I'm really fascinated at the fact you built your first million by 25. Who were and I'm such a proponent of mentorship, and you doing your podcast, that's a form of mentorship, getting information from great leaders, great marketers out there, and all the greats that you've talked to. And so who were your biggest influencers before the age of 18?
Yeah, so it's a different world because even then there weren't that many personal development books out. I mean, so it didn't come out of the world of books. Although when you ask that, probably my earliest influencer, and I'm thinking, well, what was the influence? Was Dr. Seuss, right? Like, I was like every Dr. Seuss book I read, every Dr. Seuss book.
My first book I ever read was Go Dogs Go.
Really?
That was the first book I learned how to read.
Yeah. So I was reading all the Dr. Seuss books. And in retrospect, I think they inspired me to creativity and innovation. And I was thinking about this week. You go through different stages in your life. So in the early stage, especially when you're going through high school, you want to fit in. Like this is just the desperately most important thing in your life, that you fit in somehow. And I didn't. I mean, somehow I got elected to all the offices and I was in all the clubs and I won every award, but I was kind of already on my own drummer thing, and I kind of knew that. So I didn't really fit in with this norm. And then I was way out of sync because I was a 19-year-old senior in college, a 20-year-old graduate student, made my first million at 25. We were talking, now all my friends are 20 years younger than me because I don't have anything in common with people my age because they're not doing the exciting new stuff. And I'm still building the biggest empire and doing the global nonprofit. That'll be the biggest thing that I'm going to do in my life. But when I was at that age, like you, I was always hanging out with people older than me because we had more in common. They had accomplished the same things that I had accomplished, but nobody my age around me had accomplished any of the things that I accomplished. So I didn't feel much in common with them. But I think that the thing is, once you get clear that this is a journey about being authentic, which really is the underlying cause of all my podcasts and Conscious Millionaire, because I help people who want to build businesses that make a difference, that make an impact. And that difference comes from inside of them. So what does that do? That connects them to the part of them that's authentic. And so I'm a champion for inclusiveness and diversity and everybody being whoever they are. And I want people to always feel safe, that they can be their voice and that I can help them find that voice. To me, that's at the heart of good entrepreneurship. It isn't just about numbers and mechanics and just the strategies. It's who you are and how you show up. That goes back to Dr. Seuss. I think that Dr. Seuss very early on was giving me permission to color outside the lines, to not be the norm. And if you go and you look through history and you look at today, it's the same. Everybody who accomplishes anything of real value that makes a big impact in the world, that's going to be memorable because they did something important, is way outside the lines. Nothing they're doing is inside the lines. And the people who stay inside the lines play safe, and they want to fit in, and they want, to have the right emblem on their shirt, because I went through all that, right? So I'm just saying it's a stage. Some people never get out of that stage, right? Like this is the thing for them. But everybody I know who's really interesting and I want to hang out with, nobody's coloring inside the lines. Nobody's even interested in where the lines are. They just want to go color wherever they want to color. In fact, this is interesting. Today, someone sent me about 4 years ago at the beginning of the podcast these really nice oil paints and all this stuff. They've never been out of the carton. And I bought a coloring book about 5 months ago from the Colorado Mountain Club. They have a coloring book that's all these mountain scenes, and it raises money for the mountain club. And then I went out and I bought some crayons. I've already got them in my SUV. So I'm going camping early today. I've got an old sheet, and I'm going to paint and color for 2 or 3 hours just to see what comes out of me, right? What is that? And that's before I write anything or do my iPad or do any rituals with the fire, although I'm kind of thinking I'm going to have a long fire today. But it's just to let the creativity out. But that's Elon Musk. That's Steve Jobs. That's where all that stuff comes from. If you really want to go do something and make a big impact with your life and do something that's important, you've got to spend some time cultivating yourself on a regular basis. It doesn't end. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm going camping and I'm going to color in a coloring book for the first time in maybe 30 or 40 years. I don't know when I colored in a coloring book, but I said, awesome. This is going to be fun coloring in this coloring book and using these oil paints on these nice little pieces of paper they sent me as well. And I don't know what's going to come out of it, but it's like I've got a fantastic Nikon camera. So part of this month and next month is I've decided to kind of relearn that as a creative outlet again. Because it's about perspective. When you're taking photographs, it's really all about perspective and the angle that you get something in.
What shifted in your life that now you're very much like trying to seek and bring out that much creativity? The camping, the fires, the shamanistic rituals, which, by the way, do these shamanistic rituals include any substances that we should be aware of? Any secret sauce? So, guys, the secret sauce.
Although I'm not opposed to all these. You just need to do them in ways that are legal, and they wouldn't be legal in the national park. That's a particularly illegal place to do those things. It's not a good idea. But I think my heart attack this year was the biggest turning point I've had in my life. I had a friend 2 days ago said, JV, do you realize you're doing more personal development in a year than maybe you've done in your whole lifetime? And I've lived a personal development life. And I said, I think you're right. I had a friend who's known me for 30 years. And a couple of months ago, she says, JV, you haven't just changed since your heart attack. You're a whole new person. And I think that's true. And then I said, well, what happened? Because I spent the 5 days in ICU, and the only thing I could think about, I wasn't concerned I was going to die. I told the doctors I was going to be fine. That actually bothered one of them. He goes, I don't think you're taking this seriously. And I said, I'm quite aware that I have 12 electrodes in me and, IVs in both arms. I'm clear I had a heart attack. What you don't get is I'm going to heal. And that's my only outcome that I'm interested in. So I'm not interested in any of the stuff you keep talking about, chronic disease. I said, that doesn't interest me at all. So I'm not going to be a part of that. But I laid there thinking, how can I have a bigger why? And I didn't understand the process for a couple of months. And then I realized, well, what happened when I had a heart attack? Well, the heart chakra opened. And all of a sudden, I feel this deep flow of love for myself, for other people, for the world. I feel deeper levels of compassion. I want to make a bigger difference in people's lives. So it isn't that I wasn't doing anything before. It's not like I turned the corner or something. It was more like I realized that I thought I was playing big and I realized I was playing small because I kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger visions. And I realized there was no end to the visions. Now we can get that intellectually, but I was getting it experiential, and which is really different. It's kind of like the difference between saying we're all one, and then you meditate for long periods of time and you experience that we're all one. That's the difference.
And the heart attack brought that out. That
the heart attack brought that
not only
out.
Just the mentality shift, but the physical feeling of that shift.
And it took me on a deeper spiritual journey because within 3 weeks, I was watching a couple of spiritual DVDs because I literally had to, when I came home, I had to be in bed for a couple of weeks for the most part because
you were
really
in California at this time, right?
No, Colorado.
Oh, okay, got it.
Because this happened in February.
Yep.
So I was watching a couple of spiritual DVDs, and there was probably no more than 5 seconds out of an hour and a half of this old clip of Gandhi. But it planted this big seed inside of me. And then within a couple of weeks, it was a Wednesday, I said to myself, how can I have a Gandhi-like effect on the world? And within 2 days, that had transformed to how can I inspire others to have their Gandhi-like effect? And then I launched my fourth show, High Performance Mindset, with a show. It's a solo show titled The Gandhi Within You. And it was purely a show in which I was inspiring people to reach inside, find that elegant, simple thought, which for Gandhi was, non-combative resistance, whose time has come. Get 100% in on that and say, this is what I'm going to dedicate my life to. And then attract people to become part of that movement. And that's really what Gandhi did. That's what Gandhi did.
How do people find that balance, though, between, like you were talking earlier about your dad and the luxury of items. And I know that you prefer luxury items, like you prefer the nicer, the finer things in life. So how does the modern business person, entrepreneur have that balance between the Gandhi type effect, but also got to make money and you have to be able to serve yourself?
Well, and that really, I'm glad you asked that because it's fantastic, because that is the essence of Conscious Millionaire. Everything we do here is we help entrepreneurs, business owners, business coaches learn how to really clearly define for themselves and then get it out into the marketplace, the big impact they want to be making. Which, if you think about it, that's that big problem you're solving. It's the big inspired future you're helping people go inside and realize they want, and then giving them the transformational products and services that help them go to a different level, and design that in a way that you turn the big impact you're making into big money. That's the very essence of Conscious Millionaire. And what's true is there are a lot of people who make a big impact and are absolutely broke. And there are a lot of people who make a lot of money and are vapid as far as they don't do anything that really matters. Right? But I think the company of this century, the ones that will be the biggest, most successful companies long term, and that can be a small to medium-sized company. And I'm saying small is up to 10 million on an organic level, and medium is 10 to 100 million if it's privately owned. I think those are good numbers to think about. And if you think about it, that's a nice company. You're providing really good net cash flow for you and your family, and to invest and to give back. So that's a nice sized experience for someone. I think the ones that are going to do the best over time are going to be ones that are absolutely completely focused on what's the impact I can make, and then do good business by asking, how do I turn that impact into big money? So there's some products that aren't going to work because it doesn't meet both criteria. You have to have it meet both criteria. But the secret is that you start with the impact, not the money. I think if you're asking the money question first, and that's why you want to be an entrepreneur, I think that's the old school. I think that's last century. And that's how a lot of companies started, but they still made an impact, but they were just profit driven. That's not even what consumers want today. If you look at millennials are turned off by that. They want a company to do something that matters, and they want to see that it's mattering. And that I think every company should in some way be either their own or they're connected to a nonprofit that's outside of them. They should have some kind of a give back, not as something extra. But if you look in my book, chapter 12, I have a 9-part business model. It's probably the only one you'll see that's a circle. But the 9th piece is, what's your give back program? that this isn't extra, it's part of your business model. It's how you're thinking as a citizen in the world, a citizen in your community. That if you think about it, we're so fortunate, especially in a place like Colorado, which I love, but just in the United States, period, one of the reasons that this is the number one place for entrepreneurship in the entire world is that we have something called rule of law, that we have laws that protect your intellectual property. We have laws that protect, you can incorporate a company and that's its own entity, that we have all these laws that protect you and allow you to do commerce. There are countries where everything's based on graft and fraud, and nothing is sacred, and the government can just wipe out your company tomorrow for no reason because they don't like you or you said something that upset somebody. That doesn't happen here. We're very fortunate. And I think that we have an obligation to build businesses that not just make a difference for our customers, but they make a difference for the society we're in multiple ways. And we should come from a place of gratitude, and that these are real principles for building wealth. These aren't just, I'm a good person. These are, I'm a good person who wants to build wealth because there's smart things to do, because this is the era we're now in. And this is what's going to work. And people who try to do business the old way, it's going to be so obvious that all the person wants is money out of you, that people are turned off by that. People are not interested in that today.
How can people make that shift, though? How can they pressure test that value statement of it helps change people's lives for the better, but it also provides me an income that I can help myself, I can help my family, I can help other people? Because a lot of people, and my peers also, especially in the millennial generation living in this, a lot of my friends are turned off by going and making a lot of money, but not realizing that there may be a positive impact with that. And they just see like that as greed, but you can't really, how can you help? Like, I want to help 155 million people. That's like my metric. That's what I'm focused on, 155 million. I can't help 155 million people if I'm making $50,000 a year.
Right. So you're bringing up a lot of good points. So I want to give people just a very quick roadmap based upon what you asked. But I hadn't planned on doing this. I was going to give something else away. But I'll give two things away. So I haven't done this in a long time on a show, but I'm going to give my book away for free. So when my book came out, it was number one on Amazon in 34 categories. So it made it number one on all of Amazon. We had 50,000 copies downloaded in just over 3 days. So I want to give it to you. Here's how you can get it. And then I'm going to tell you what you need to look at in the book. It's consciousmillionaire.com/free book. Again, that's consciousmillionaire.com/free book. You already know that I give people permission not to read the whole book. I'm going to tell you my favorite chapters. There's 7, 3, and 7. 2, 3, and 7. So 2 is going to give you a model of conscious focused action that you can use to make any kind of money you want and do anything you want. But 3 is called Win by Becoming Conscious. And the last section of that is going to really help you develop your mindset, because I start with what I call first stage capitalism, which is a concept I created that relates to the stage of capitalism that was the win-lose stage. So that's how capitalism is still practiced by most people, that there are 100 pennies in a dollar. I want as many as I can get, and if you get some, okay, but I'd rather get most of them. So it's a win-lose model, and it outlines 9 beliefs that define that. And then throughout the book, I talk about the second stage in the triple win model of you, others, and society winning together. And so I asked myself the question, how does each one of these 9 beliefs need to change to become a belief that if you embodied these 9 beliefs, truly embodied them, you would see that Connor can't impact as many people as he can, or make as much money as he can, or be successful in any way that he wants to be successful, unless I'm also successful and society wins as well. You can win, but now you're limited to how far you can go, because there's a much higher place you can go, but we all have to win in the process. It can't be just a model where it's all about one person winning. So that changes your mindset, and 7 is on flow. But now I'm going to tell you, go read chapter 12, which is all about my business model that I created, because it's going to give you the different parts, but I want to give them to you succinctly right here. So you've got to start with, what's the difference I want to make? And that has to inform everything you choose to do. But here's the nice piece. That difference you want to make, which is an impact, is a solution to somebody's problem. So now you're going to look at, well, let's just say 3 possible niches that have a problem that the difference you want to make is a solution for their problem. But now you need to ask some very specific questions. You need to start with joy. Now, I know that's an interesting place to start your business journey here, but if you're not filled with joy by what you're doing, you will never be as successful as you could be. But if you get up in the morning and you're filled with joy, you're on the right path.
Is joy transferable with gratitude, or
yeah,
is it
no, it's different. Joy is like this deep feeling of elation, of excitement, of fulfillment, all those kind of things. And so here's what the joy needs to be about, because once you choose a niche and once you choose the number one problem you're going to be solving with the impact you make, this is what you're going to be living. Not just 5 days a week, but it's what you're going to be living every day, because you're going to be thinking about it. So you need to be super excited about solving that problem, right? So you get the creative juices and you go, oh my gosh, I get to talk to another person with this problem, or we get to create a new product or service, to help a person with this problem. So it has to really genuinely excite you. Second, that niche needs to be big enough so that wherever you want to go, at least in the next 3 years, because you don't want to change niches for 3 years. You want to really understand your niche, that you can build your company because it's a big enough niche that you can have a very small portion of it and it still makes sense. But here's the third part, and this relates to the money part. Whatever it is that you want to be making financially from this. So you need to get clear. I like to look out 3 years. Where do you want to be in 3 years? Do the people in this niche in large numbers either have the amount of money, available cash or credit, or they can get a hold of it easily so that they can buy your products or services? And if not, move on to the next niche. So this is where you have to differentiate what's your purpose on earth. And a lot of good-hearted, because I work with people who are purpose-driven, they have good hearts, they care about people, and this is one of the biggest problems that can happen. And I have to help them understand, you're not a bad person, you're in business, you cannot continue to expand and make a bigger difference if you're not making money, and you got to pay your own bills, by the way, right? Here's the thing you've got to remember. You are not on the planet to save people's lives. They are. We're each here to take our own journey. So when someone says, oh, I've got to help this group, I know they don't have any money, I'm going, call that a nonprofit activities, and on Saturdays, take some time and go help those people for free. But do not confuse this with a business, because it's not. A business must be financially viable and have a path for constantly growing and expanding your cash flows, your profits, and your wealth. So that's in just a nutshell how you can very quickly start looking at how you make an impact and you turn it into wealth, you turn it into money, because you're only working with people who are salivating to solve a problem that is the difference you want to make, and they easily have the money to pay for it. It's why my market is successful business owners, successful business coaches that want to go to their next mountaintop. But, to work with me, at the lowest end is 7,500, at the highest end is 100,000, because I bring that kind of value, but then I have to choose a target market that can afford that, and not just afford it, but it's a great deal for them. That when they finish an engagement or they work with me for a year or we build a podcast out, they're going to go, wow, this was worth so much more than what I spent. That's what I want to hear from them. But that depends on who you choose as your market. So you have to choose that market very carefully.
So people want that millionaire status. That's like the thing, right? I'm going to be a millionaire someday.
Well, and that was my deal at 5. I mean, here I was growing up in this family that was technically poor. You know, sometimes we didn't know how we were going to eat. And
where'd you grow up originally?
I grew up out in the center of Florida in this little country town with about 200 to 300 people. The great thing was it was on a 4 by 5 mile lake. So why am I so fascinated with nature? I grew up in nature. I grew up in a beautiful place. I mean, really, it was a place where you could justify people would have had $1 million homes, but nobody did, right? It just wasn't the deal. And I grew up boating and fishing with a cane pole with worms because I never had a rod and reel. We didn't have that much money.
But you knew at a young age.
I'm going to be at 5. At 5, I decided, well, it was mainly because I was trained when we went to the grocery store not to ask for a candy bar even. If it wasn't on the list, we weren't getting it. And I would pray to God that mom put some candy on the list. Literally, at 5, this is stuff you do, right? That's true.
And then once you were able to get it, you went all out. Hence,
I started my first little business at 4.
Yeah.
And by 7, I had several little businesses. I'd go, what if there'd been an internet? I think I would have built something.
Oh, you would have.
I had a lawn. I was the only guy, only kid. There was no workers' comp stuff back then, right? Out in the country, nobody cared. And so at 9, I had the only lawn mowing business in town. And I knocked on everybody's door. And I got people to pay me, and I mowed their lawns. And I made good money because I was it.
Now, you having that vision, like that was there, that was imprinted. You knew success was down the line. And then you achieved millionaire status at 25. What's the biggest misconception about having $1 million in your bank account when it actually happens that people just don't?
Yeah, well, here was what happened for me. And that's such a wonderful question because I wrote about it in my book because I thought it was profound. So here I am in this beautiful home, all this designer furniture coming in and all this kind of stuff. And 3 months into it, I was standing in my living room looking, the whole wall was glass, looking out on the bay. And I remember whenever I talk about it, it's like it was then. There was palm trees in my front lawn, sailboats, sunshine. And I had this incredible insight that was horrible because I realized, how you have those split-second insights? And I said it out loud to myself. I said, something's wrong with this picture. And then, all the gates came down and all this stuff, I just said it out loud that I didn't even know. And I said, wow, my life is a mess. And I don't even like myself. I'm horrible at relationships, which was definitely true. I was good at one-night stands, but I was horrible at relationships. And I said, my life is a wreck. All I've done is figured out how to make money. So as a little boy, all I had was this dream that I wasn't going to live this way, right? That this was not going to be my life. But as soon as I got that, and I was fortunate enough to get just enough money at just the early enough age to realize that actually wasn't the answer. And then I had to go out, and there were just a few books at that point, Wayne Dyer, I was reading Tony Robbins, all this kind of stuff, right? And going off to sweat lodges and, spiritual retreats and personal development, programs. There weren't nearly as many as there are today, but I was doing everything. And I was seeking what's the answer. And ultimately, I realized I was totally miserable. Moved forward, sold the companies, went off on a journey, lived at a Buddhist monastery, lived at Esalen, and then came and lived in Boulder, which is kind of an interesting trilogy. Did a ton of camping for 2 and 3 weeks at a time, searching because I had come to the conclusion, which was accurate, that what was missing in my life is I had no purpose. And I had figured out enough about this purpose thing because I'd read a lot about it, that the real purpose was doing something that was giving to other people, that was the real purpose. I just didn't know what it was. What was I here for? And it took me in that case 3 years to work through stuff, and till I had that moment in a hot tub in actually Reno, Nevada, because I was skiing Lake Tahoe for the winter. So I got this really nice place in Reno because they had built these new things because everybody from California was moving there for tax reasons. Because if you don't know, there's no taxes in Reno, and there's like 14% tax in California. So I didn't want to get like called a resident, of California. So I was like 10 miles across the border from California. And I was in the hot tub and I was reading this pamphlet from the Green Festival that I'd picked up in San Francisco that weekend. And I saw the word conscious, and in my forehead, I actually saw, because a lot of my intuition is very visual, I actually saw the phrase conscious millionaire, and I got a tingling in my spine, and I said, bang, that's it. That's why I'm on earth. I didn't know what conscious millionaire was, but I'm thinking, this is cool. This sounds really cool. This is going to be great. And I felt
physically,
it. Like I knew.
Visualized it.
And I waited 40 minutes to get out of the hot tub because I know how the universe works. And then I went to my computer and I took consciousmillionaire.com and a whole bunch of other URLs. And I remember saying to myself that night, this is my assignment. Right? Like I'd been but see, I'd been so dramatically searching for 3 years, all these different things I'd gone to, and camping, very frequently for 2 and 3 weeks at a time. And what I called asking the universe, why am I here? I've got all these skills. I got these graduate degrees. I know how to do stuff, but how can I use it to really help other people? And that, I'll go back to your original question. Why do I love living in Colorado? Because Colorado is chock full of people like me, like you, like a lot of you that are listening today, that want to make a difference with your life. And it's the kind of people and that are really connected to being organic and doing things naturally and being out in sports and outdoors. And that to me is like the perfect life. And here we have it in Colorado. It's an amazing mecca. I do believe that Colorado is the California of this century. Yeah. Because California is now just this. Yeah. California is now just this super crowded, overexpensive. I did graduate.
We won't even talk about the politics.
Yeah, we won't talk about the politics or anything else. But I lived there in the 70s for 2 years in LA and did graduate work when it was 8 million people. And I think now it's like 22 or 26. I mean, depends on how much you think LA is in terms of geography, right? But it has a lot of downsides. It's not the dream world that was in the 70s, the 60s and 70s and 80s, which I think was really the dream world. You've got Silicon Valley, but even Silicon Valley is insane. I mean, unless you think, having a 100 square foot apartment for $1 million is reasonable, but it's kind of the truth, right? Oh my gosh.
So what's your big vision now at this phase of your life, post heart attack, doing all these shamanistic rituals and still and you're still hustling, still focused on growing your business and your wealth, not just monetary wealth, but your spiritual wealth and your health wealth. So what's the big picture from here, JB?
Yeah, there are lots of pieces to it. I'm really now thinking in terms of the next 2 to 3 years, and I'm thinking in terms of the next 15 years. So I'm building Conscious Millionaire with an ultimate goal of selling it. And at the same time, I have a global nonprofit that's gone through a couple of iterations. So the third one's going to be right. I think that's going to be the biggest thing I do with my life. And it's called Conscious World Foundation, because the real question, I know there'll be a think tank portion to it, is what is a conscious world? And how do we create it? So that question and the conscious evolution of humankind is probably my deepest obsession, really, because that relates to quantum physics, it relates to consciousness, it relates to all the Eastern studies, having lived at a Buddhist monastery. It relates to why so many things are falling apart. I'm not going to get on a political rant because I don't really do politics, but I'll say that really the two major parties are falling apart. And, we in Colorado, I think, may be the best example of where we're headed in the future. When you have 40% of registered voters as independents, which means the one thing we all have in common, because I'm one of those, is that we don't like the old system. That's what we're saying. We're saying that doesn't make any sense to be part of a party whose major objective is to annihilate the other party.
Well,
and
that's outrageous that we have a popularity contest to see who's president. I think the future looks more like a quote unquote board of directors. There's something new that is coming. Yeah. And so much of Donald Trump, good or bad, probably shined the biggest light on that fact. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's an interesting comment. Whoever won, this is more politics than I've ever talked about on a podcast. We had two really, let me see, what's the best way to say it? I don't want to use the word corrupt. We had two horrible choices, both of whom are really flawed human beings. And that's just a statement without a political agenda to it. So we have these two very flawed human beings, and one of them was going to be president. And both of them have, if you go to Jungian work, which I've done some of that, and you look at shadow work, both of them have big shadows. So from my perspective, I said, I really think what's going on here on the collective whole is that we as a group are going to decide which one of these shadows we want to look at first. Not like we aren't going to look at the other one at some point too. And I think that we're doing that in grand style. We're looking at the shadows, and those shadows are part of who we are as a culture. And so you can kind of blame, or you could say, wait a minute, is this not a reflection of a lot of stuff that's gone on in the history of our country? And is it the future we want, which I think unanimously is going to be no. We want something different. But the only way we can do that is look at the shadow itself. And so in that way, there's a gratitude because one of these people were going to be president. They both had huge shadows, and it was going to give us an opportunity to say, is this who we want to be, or do we see a higher calling? And that, to me, is the conscious evolution of human beings. I think the rest of my lifetime, probably the rest of your lifetime, I mean, the era that we're in is going to be chaos. And it's going to be chaos because we're going through transformation. And if you think about your own life, if you've gone through transformation throughout your life, and usually the periods that are the most shadowy valleys that we go through, the darkest moments of our lives, and the longer you live, there will be more people. That's all I want to say. There are more of these coming. But these are the times of great transformation. They're painful oftentimes. Oftentimes you want to put a sheet over all the mirrors in the house sometimes, right? Right. But it's how we grow. It's how we transform. It's going to rocket launch
you to that next step. You have to, it's the same as building muscle. You got to break it down to build.
Right. Because when we finish this, I'm hustling over to the athletic club and I'm going to do Tabatas because that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, buddy.
6 days a week.
Tabatas?
You do like 30 seconds intense and 90 seconds off, 30 seconds intense, 90 seconds off. Oh, and it actually has a bigger effect on your body. In 21 minutes, I can get more value than I would from an hour of a typical workout.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about the physical side because I go to the gym and people are in there set after set doing all this stuff, but you can get an even more efficient workout.
I'm right now, I'm looking at all the different ways I can hack to get my body where I want it to go. So I'm willing to do hard stuff, I'll put it that way, for short periods of time if it'll get me there faster.
Have you done the ketogenic thing? Have you looked at into that?
I have done ketogenic for periods of time, and I fast 12 hours a day right now, so that's part of it. But I love the Colorado Athletic Club where I'm a member, but I think I'm also next month going to go back to Orange Theory as well and do 2 days a week at Orange Theory and 4 at the Colorado Athletic Club, and maybe hire a trainer for 2 of those. So because I'm thinking that might be the way to maximize my results in the shortest amount of time and see what can I do in 3 or 4 months to get to where I want to be. Because our health, especially going through the heart attack, our health is at the core. I'm all about everything we do at Conscious Millionaire is about becoming a high performer. And a high performer to me is somebody who makes a big impact with their life. They're always looking for new mountaintops. And because we work only with business owners and business coaches, entrepreneurs, they're somebody who also makes a lot of success financially. They make big money. The two go together. So I think that we're in this new era where all this chaos all over the world, you can look at it and wring your hands and go, woe is me, and all this stuff is horrible. Or you can just say, I really think this is part of a bigger whole and that we're on this transformational journey. And I'm extremely optimistic that as we go through this, we're going to come to higher and better ways to live as human beings, to live together in society, and to create a world that wins for everybody. And then what are the rules of that world? And one of my basic rules, I talk about it a lot on my podcast, is that for us to be in a world where everybody wins, everybody must do their part. And I think that's got to be at the core of our belief system, that everybody has to do their part. I don't care if you're disabled, there's a part you can play. And you, as an individual listening today, you already know the truth. Your deepest fulfillment comes from reaching new challenges, from making a bigger difference in other people's lives. It doesn't come from sitting and watching TV for 4 hours. There is little, if any, fulfillment that comes from that. It comes from getting out there and doing something with your life that you personally find meaningful, that you feel matters.
So JV, on that note, which was an awesome note, how can people find you, get in contact with you, find the podcast?
Well, we've already given you the free book. I'll give that to you again.
And thank you for that. We really appreciate it.
I just felt like the right thing to do. I want people to get the knowledge, the information that they need. It's consciousmillionaire.com/free book. That again is consciousmillionaire.com/free book. And you can go to consciousmillionaire.com. You'll see the podcast tab. Subscribe to my podcast. I would love you to come listen. We've got soon to be 5 podcasts that'll be out there. And just to soak in, I have such amazing guests, soak in all this wisdom and be inspired to define your next mountaintop and then go scale it.
So there's probably still 5 topics that I wanted to talk to you about that we didn't get to. So we'll definitely have to do this again, but
love to.
I really appreciate it. JV Crum III, ladies and gentlemen. Guys, don't forget, please go subscribe to the show, leave a review. It's always very, very helpful for us. And we'll chat with you next time.